And I have a small introduction here, just saying hello and good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. I'm Janine Ai'i, Executive Director of LabNet. I am thrilled to welcome you to today's LabNet Women in Tech workshop, Mastering the Art of Storytelling with AI with the amazing Pierre Khawand. Thank you so much, Pierre, for being with us again. As many of you know, since the advent of tools like ChatGPT, we've all become a little more polished and efficient, whether in writing emails, crafting presentations, or summarizing events. Personally, I found it incredibly helpful in making my communication faster and clearer. That said, there is still an art of storytelling, especially when we want to sound human and not like a machine. I'm very excited to see how Pierre will help us elevate our skills even further. For those of you new to LabNet, we are the premier network of Lebanese in tech in North America. Our mission is to build a strong, connected community, nurture the next generation of leaders, and give back to Lebanon. Our Women in Tech community was launched to guide, coach, and support rising women tech leaders. Sorry, I'm declining somebody here. Grow their presence in the industry and expand our collective impact. One of our core initiatives in the WIT mentorship program is it is designed to support early and mid-career professionals through one-on-one guidance. And this program is hosting today's session with Pierre. We're also delighted today to welcome the LabNet Tech Fellows who are joining today's session from Lebanon. These are bright university students preparing for successful careers in tech through our fellowship program. Now, a few words about our speaker. Pierre Khawand is a veteran tech leader with 20 plus years of experience in innovation and strategic management. He's the founder of People on the Go, a company dedicated to cultivating leadership, innovation, and mindfulness in the workplace. He's also the author of several books and the creator of Hello Mindful app. Pierre holds degrees from the American University of Beirut and the University of Michigan and has completed executive education at Stanford GSB. Beyond the boardroom, he enjoys mindful hikes, Tai Chi, and Argentine tango, a true embodiment of balance in life and work. Pierre, thank you for being with us and for sharing your knowledge today. We're honored to have you. And as I said earlier, this event is being recorded. So with no further ado, let's get started. I'll turn it back over to you, Pierre.
Thank you, Janine. Hello, everyone. So great to be back and to be with you and see many familiar faces and names. This is a treat and very much looking forward to our topic today and sharing with you a broad range of insights and tips and techniques and demonstrations. And as you may have seen in some of my previous demonstrations or workshops, I like to demonstrate things and give you practical things that you can take back and actually apply. And feel free to, if you have a clarification question or something you want to interject, feel free to raise the hand or put something in the chat. We probably would leave the longer discussions till later at the end because there's so much to cover. But if something is on your mind and needs clarification or this brilliant insight you want to share with us, feel free to share it as soon as you have it. So, so first of all, what I would like to start actually, I'd like to start with a little story. After all, we're here for storytelling. So the story is in 2009, Rob Walker, who is a journalist, he wanted to find out if storytelling is indeed a powerful tool. So what he did, he bought 200 objects on eBay. The average price of these was less than $1. And then he called on authors and asked them to be part of this study and to write stories about these objects. So now he had 200 objects with 200 stories, and he went back to eBay and he tried to resell these objects. So what do you think happened? So let me tell you one of those objects. So this is this beautiful horse's head, which he bought at 99 cents. And after the story was added to it, this was sold at $62.95. So in total, the 100 objects that he bought were for $129, and he sold them at $8,000. So, in summary, the original value was really very little, and the stories added so much to the value. So imagine the possibilities in your everyday work life, and actually not just work life, life in general. So think about how incorporating a compelling story and telling it skillfully could transform your presentations, your projects. It can help you amplify your impact. It can help you support the projects and the initiatives you want to move forward. It can help you earn the recognition you deserve. So the potential is truly amazing, no matter what your purpose is. So I'm curious, however, what your purpose is from being with us today. So I'd like you to take a look at this list, and you can put that in the chat. It would be great to get a little bit, to know a little bit more about why you're here today. So if you could just put a quick note in the chat. So why are you here? What story do you want to tell us? I'll give you just like 10, 15 seconds and we'll see what comes up. We're not going to take a lot of time because we have so much to cover, but it'd be great to hear from you. Okay, so 4. Okay, 6, something else. So tell us what that is, Mo. Okay.
Let me give it some thought. I want to formulate a good one for you.
Okay. Yeah. Take your time. Omar is 2 and Usama is number 1 investor story. Okay. Sarah is 5. Yeah. 1. Okay, so quite a variety. Okay, perfect. Okay, Elias work as designer and vision is important. Yeah, okay, wonderful. All right, so let's now talk about how we're gonna get there. So I have 3 distinct sections in today's session that I want to make sure we cover. First is the storytelling fundamentals. So we're going to go through some very important principles and concepts and techniques about the storytelling part before we get into the technology part. Because as we heard earlier from Janine, there is the human part, which is pretty much the most important part, and then technology can add to that. So then we'll get into the technologies, and of course we're going to start with, guess what, AI tools, and then we'll talk about other technologies as well, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the details, because you know what they say, the devil is in the details. We can have these great concepts and visions and everything else, but if we don't really get to the details and work with our content, it may not really get us what we were hoping to get. So let's start with the storytelling fundamentals. These are the technologies I'll be getting to. So of course, I'm going to use today ChatGPT, but whatever AI tool you're using, it will pretty much do the same. And then I'm hoping time will allow us to also get into some Prezi demonstrations and also some Miro demonstrations. We'll see how it goes. So storytelling fundamentals. So why storytelling? Well, because the traditional presentations don't really work. They might work for certain things, but they may not work for important and worthwhile endeavors. They don't leave a mark. They don't leave an impact. You probably heard about the death by PowerPoint. It's easy to get there with just telling people what you're gonna tell them, and then tell them what you told them. So storytelling, on the other hand, is intended to engage people's emotions so they feel something and get moved to do something. So actually, if you get this point from today's session, it's probably enough. So let me repeat it again. So storytelling engages people's emotions so they feel something and get moved to do something. So that's why storytelling. So now the question is, how do we do it? how do we create that story? So I'm going to share with you three I call them formulas, but basically they're approaches for how you might construct your story. So the first one is one that was pretty much created by Nancy Duarte's, and she's pretty, actually, she's a thought leader in this space. She has, I think, 1 or 2 books out there for those who really want to get deep into it. But this is the representation of her model. So basically, tell people how things are right now, which basically means, what are the challenges? What's the problem? What's the impact that's having on various people or stakeholders? And then take them to the vision of how things can be. So create some hope, create some excitements on how we can address those challenges and where we can get. However, things tend to be much more multidimensional. So it's not like, oh, there's a problem, there's a solution. There could be many different aspects to this problem. So then you bring up another aspect of the problem. And then you show them how we could address that aspect. And you might do this several times, and really covering this challenge in ways that are meaningful and bringing up what could be some obstacles, what could be some hindrances, and continuously building on how you're going to address those, and then ending with a bigger vision for the future that people can get excited about, and that might include a call to action. So that would be one formula of how you might proceed with your story. And then later, I'm gonna show you in the examples. I'm gonna show you. You're gonna see how that can be easily intertwined into the story. And just FYI, there are some very famous speeches in history that use this. I think Steve Jobs the speech about the iPhone release, the first one, used this kind of formula. I don't think he intentionally used it. I think analyzing it after the fact showed that that's exactly what he was doing, probably intuitively. And then the I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King also was along those lines. Okay, second formula. This is Paul Smith's formula, and this is easier, a little more template driven, and could be applicable also for things that are a little more structured, a little more analytical. So you have those 8 questions, and you basically can use them as your template and answer those questions, and that can help you create your story. So first is the why. Why are we here? Why is this important, etc. And then going through, where and when, who are the main characters, what's exactly the problem, opportunity, and what did these characters do about it, and how did it turn out? And then what can we learn, and what should we do now? So this is a little easier, I think, but depends on the nature of the story you're trying to tell and the context. You can pick the one that's most relevant. Third one, an easier one, a little more traditional, which we call the hero formula. So a likable hero with a worthwhile ambition, but there is a roadblock somewhere, and ultimately they overcome whatever roadblock and they solve the problem. Excuse me for a moment. Okay. Now, you could potentially use one of those or design your own or mix and match. The important elements that typically would be effective is creating suspense. So setting up expectations, not just giving the answer, but really creating a path towards the answer. So that can help make the story more compelling. really showing the gap between how things are and how things can be. And then showing the path for how do we close the gap, and then the rewards if we close the gap, and really understanding our stakeholders and having empathy with them, which makes all this so much more compelling and make it make sense. All right, so now let's move into knowing our audience. So I'm a little curious, and I would invite you to think about this for a moment first on your own, and write down in the chat a few notes about what you think knowing your audience means. So just, whatever comes to your mind. There's no right or wrong answer. Whatever comes to your mind, let's do a little bit of a engaging exercise. So what does knowing your audience mean? Would love to see a few ideas there. Yeah, thank you. What moves them? That's a really good one. Who you're trying to sell. Yeah, knowing exactly who are you targeting. Knowing the level of study, yeah, among many other characteristics, like tailor your message, who's the target audience, their pain points, okay, what excites them to learn. Yes, so you got it. So all of the above, their needs, yes. So I'm gonna put it into this slide. I'm going to bring to it a little bit of neuroscience. So knowing our audience means understanding their worries, their concerns, their unmet needs. Why? Because if we know this, and then our solution or product or whatever it is we're offering, if we can orient those towards addressing their worries, concerns, unmet needs, we're going to help them reduce the stress and therefore reduce that cortisol that gets released when there is a lot of stress. We're going to also make them calmer instead of feeling activated. And that's going to help tremendously in making our message stick and get them to be more interested in what we have to offer. At the same time, knowing our audience means understanding what gets them interested, excited, etc. And that means helping them have more of those great dopamine and oxytocin and endorphin, and help them feel motivated and connected with us and more happy. So really, in other words, it's pretty much putting ourselves into their shoes and developing empathy and using that in our stories. So that's kind of knowing the audience, which brings a really interesting element, which is this reflection on how are decisions made. How do we make decisions? How does our audience make decisions? Logically or emotionally? Well, it's a really good reflection, something to think about. And I think there's many schools of thought. This school of thought that says we make our decisions emotionally, but then we try to justify them using logic. And there's all kinds of, ways to look at it. But what I want to mention here is that the way we make decisions, it's a complex interplay between logic and emotions. It's not one way or the other. It's really very entangled. And our story needs to address both, because it's likely in our audience, there will be people who gravitate towards the logic, and there will be other people who gravitate towards the emotional side, and we need to get them both on board. And even in highly analytical decisions, what happens is emotions still play a big role, because they play a role in how people decide which criteria to look into, and also how much emphasis they put on different criteria. So it ends up being very impacted by the emotional side. So our story needs to engage both. And as we said early on, we want to make sure we create a feel, and people feel something, because that's when they're going to be motivated to do something. So even in a logical type, analytical type story, we still want to address the emotional part. Okay, so now elevating your content. So I'm going to give you a moment to look at this slide and just think about it in terms of, communication, presentation, storytelling. Like, what would you want to share? Do you want to share the data and the details that you've collected? Do you want to share the information, which, takes the data and give it some more context so it becomes more colorful and more useful? Or connecting this information together so it becomes a more interesting body of knowledge? Or the insights that come up, those revelations about how things are, how things might be in the future, or connecting those insights, which creates a bigger body of wisdom, which can then lead to creating something that's very impactful. So what do you want to share? Well, it depends on who we're addressing and the context. However, I do have some thoughts to share with you, which is the insights is a very interesting and promising place to make sure we give it enough emphasis. So insights is what resonates quite well with various audiences, and then you can go down from there to support your insights, or you can go up to show the impact that your whatever you collected is going to lead to. But keeping this in mind and being intentional, where to start and where you take your audience as you tell your story can be very important. For instance, if you're presenting to investors, I know several of you mentioned investors earlier. You definitely don't want to start with the data. You're not going to get their attention for too long if you start here. You probably want to start here or even here, and then go to the other aspects based on their questions and what they need to know and so forth. So yeah, you want to really gauge where you start and where you go depending on who you're talking to and the purpose. Okay, I have one more idea for you related to elevating your content. And this one, we're not going to spend much time on it right now, but I'd like to mention it. And this could be one of the homeworks from today for those who feel this would be applicable and helpful. So I want to add one more dimension to elevating your content, and that is elevating how you represent yourself. And specifically, having a nicely designed and rehearsed elevator pitch, so that when somebody sees you, whether it's in a meeting or in an elevator or in any encounter, and you have that 10, 20 seconds to introduce yourself, you have that powerful message that elevate what you're doing and have it be really impactful. So I have a couple formulas that I'm just going to share them quickly now, but the slides, I'm going to have the slides for you and a couple other resources. I'll share them with you at the end electronically. So this is one template you could use if you want to focus on your bigger mission. This is another template that could be focused on a project. And I also show you, a sample from my elevator pitch, which is about, again, 19 seconds is this magical number, plus or minus. So it's not, can't be that long, and it needs to be just succinct enough to quickly give someone, that's what I do, and that's what I'm looking for. Okay, so this will be a little homework for later. So let's start now. Let's switch from the storytelling part to the technologies part. So again, I'm going to start with AI tools. And in my little demonstrations here, I'm going to use ChatGPT. But again, whether you're using Copilot or something else, you should be able to do the same. And then I think we'll have time to show you also something in Prezi and something in Miro. But let's start with the AI tools and how they can help. So I do have a little case study. I'm calling it case study, but it's more of a very practical example I want to run in the AI tool, so you see it live, like how this could work. But let's talk about the AI tools first, just briefly. So how can they help? They can help in so many ways. They can help with structure. They can help with simplifying complex concepts. How can you take something really technical or complicated and turn it into something that's much more easy to understand? They can help you decide what kind of visuals would support your presentation. And then the narrative, the script, helping you decide what to say and how to say it in a way that's really effective. And then giving you feedback. So you could, when you finish and you have it ready, you can upload things and say, okay, can you critique this for me? How is it accomplishing my objective? So now the question is, and something you probably all have been dealing with, to really make this work, we need to set the context. I see so many, and we teach a lot of AI related, techniques and ways to leverage AI in various organizations. And the one thing that I see most missing is that users typically don't take enough time to set the context, to give the tool the information that's needed to create compelling outcomes. If we don't set the context, we get generic outcome. It sounds good, but it doesn't necessarily, it's not specific enough to address our issue, our needs, the needs of our stakeholders. So setting that context, and I'll talk more about what this could mean in a moment. And then, of course, providing meaningful prompts, like really explaining what we want, what's the dilemma, why is this interesting or difficult, and to what level of granularity we want to dig into this. So this is the key to success when having AI tools help us with our story. So setting the context, how can we accomplish this? So one way to accomplish this is to upload, to provide as much data as possible. So if you've already collected data related to your story, whether it is interviews with users or surveys or focus groups or whatever else, you want to make sure this is first made known to the AI tool. And then being very clear on who the target audience is and what's the desired outcome. So the example I'm going to share with you is the following. So, so this is a problem definition statement, and I have actually this sample. I'm going to give it to you in the online portal I'm going to share with you. So those who are curious about problem definition and they want a template for how to define a problem in a way that's compelling and that's clear and that's complete, you can feel free to check it out. And maybe something you already have something similar or not, but it could be interesting to check this out. And when we say problem, it doesn't mean it's a problem. It could be a problem, or it could be an opportunity that you wanna explore. So in this definition, in this template, we first define what the challenge or opportunity are, and then we get a little more specific about what is exactly the scope here, because our definition might be pretty broad. It might be quite encompassing, giving a little background, but what is it we want to focus on? So being very clear on what is in scope, what is out of scope. And then the constraints. So what things we know that may be limited, or maybe policies or guidelines we need to adhere to, so we don't go into this great, storytelling, a story that is way beyond what's possible, and then we run into all kinds of issues. being very clear on the target users and stakeholders, and then the expected outcomes, and then how are we going to measure success. Now, this typically we like it to be succinct, something like a page or two. Sometimes you may have some additional background information you want to share, and that can be additional documents that you upload into the AI tool. So this is the case study I'd like to do with you. We're going to do this right now. So I'm going first to upload the problem statement. So that's how I'm giving a lot of context here. I'm not just saying, oh, we have this interruption problems, I want to do a presentation about it. I'm defining it in a way that's really succinct with my desired outcome clearly articulated. And now the AI tool can really help me. And then I'm being clear, what do I want? And finally, the exact outcome that I'm looking for from this interaction with the AI tool. So that's going to be my first prompt. So let's show you how this is going to work. So I'm going to upload my problem definition. And then I'm going to take this prompt and let's see what I'm going to get. So I got first the outline that I requested. So there's an opening scene, there is the problem, and then there is the impact that it has on the various aspects of productivity, well-being, etc. And then why is this so important? Is there a better way? And what are we proposing here to solve? And then the benefits and the call to action. So this is just the first attempt. So when we talk about AI tools, there's so many ways to leverage them. One way is to just get an outline and to use that as our starting point, and then to go and work on our own and finish the story and everything else. Another way is to turn it into a conversation and continue working with the tool. So for instance, I can go back and say, can you give me 3 to 5 research studies that show the severity of this problem? Because I feel like to make this really impactful, I need to have some data and some science behind it. So I can go ahead and make this easy and let the tool come up with this for me. And now I have the information I need to support my story. And that can become an important part of the story. So let's see what's going to come up with. Okay, so there's a story from Microsoft about work trends. UC Irvine has, seems like they have another study on that. Couple other universities have done, and I have the source, so I can go to the sources and extract what exactly I need, or I can ask ChatGPT to do it. I say, from this study, can you give me a couple quotes that support this? Any data that will be relevant. So that's the level of detail we can go to. And one more thing, I can say, can you provide ideas for visuals to include in the first 3 slides? I can even ask for, can you give me, I think it already did earlier, like a summary of the slides. So I think it offered that without even me asking, but I can ask for, can you give me more details or more modification to the slides? And then I want to get some ideas for visuals. So let's see what it comes up with. Yeah, so I can get here ideas for what the visuals could look like. And then I can even ask, okay, let's try one more thing. Can you create the visual for slide 1? This may take a little time. We'll come back to it. But what I want to share before we go too far into this, whenever we talk about using AI tools, we really try to bring up this point of using them thoughtfully. And that means, first of all, really being aware of what our organization's policies and guidelines are, or maybe if you are a small organization or you're working on your own, starting a new project, initiative, venture, you want to be careful about what your customers or prospects or investors' policies and guidelines are and how they look at the use of AI. So we really want to be informed and adhere to those depending on the context. And then the other three questions we always ask ourselves: is this output that I got from AI, is this representing my intended communication? If it is, great, and that's great. This is where those tools can be really helpful. But if it's not, which more often than not, the first pass may not be. So this is what I need to review and adjust. And if there is data involved, we always want to do facts checking. So those studies I asked for earlier, I would go to those studies and I'll make sure this is exactly what I'm seeking and that's representing my intention. So those are things to remember whenever we use AI tools. So this was a interesting, interesting initial visual. And actually, when we talk about images, issues come up like, can we use AI generated images? So can we use ChatGPT images? Is there licensing, attribution, or payment needed? And what are the current expectations and best practices? So this is the answer. Actually, this is ChatGPT's answer that yes, you can use them. And the ones created by DAL-E from ChatGPT, they don't require licensing, attribution, or payment. However, there's a recommendation if you're presenting to people who are very design sensitive or IP aware, you may want to include a little note that those images were generated by AI. So that's kind of an overall recommendation for the use of images. So I thought I would include that for you just as an additional little piece. Okay. Okay, Noor, any additional AI tools that generate nice images? Actually, let's say good question. I haven't used many image focus tools, but what I saw over time is that ChatGPT's image generation via DAL-E has been improving tremendously. Like maybe a year or two ago, I probably would not use them, but today I feel like they're getting much closer and much more interesting. So yeah, if anybody else on the call have used some AI tools that focus on images, please feel free to share. And then confidentiality. Yeah, so yes, so this is a very important part of kind of what I mentioned earlier in terms of look at your organization's policies and guidelines, which usually cover what can and cannot be shared in AI tools. So typically, most organizations would use kind of tools that are more specific to that organizations that aren't open to the public, and the data is not open to the public. And like I do a lot of work with Stanford and UCSF, and they have very specific guidelines, and they have their own platform that accesses ChatGPT and Copilot and other AI tools, but they do it through their platform, and that is secure and not shared outside their platform. So there's all kinds of things to consider, and in general, sensitive data, you probably don't want to have it in shared. And there is a setting which you're probably all familiar with. In that setting, Anyway, I probably will need to find where it is exactly, where you can say, I don't want the tool to learn from my data. So if you're doing some more things that are more sensitive, you definitely want to turn off that setting so that your data is not going back to the model and becoming a way to train the model. So those things to consider are all things, good things to consider. Yeah, thank you, Riham. Okay, and Usama, wonderful. Okay, so we have some more suggestions there for tools. Okay, great. So let's go into the next two, and I'm thinking if we want to do those before we talk about detailing your content. Let's talk about detailing the content, but before we do that, let's open it. Good time to open for a few questions. So at least if there's something on your mind, I know there were some things in the chat, and we've got some conversations going in the chat, which is great. And okay, so Mo, are you able to see what I'm sharing now?
Pierre, he was going to log off and log back in because I think he's
Okay,
a new person.
okay.
He's coming in now.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, so any other questions or things we should stop and address?
Hello, Mr. Pierre. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Go ahead, Mohammed.
Um, First, I am Mohammed Hussein. I am a senior computer engineering student, but there's a point that took my attention, which is I can I don't know if you said it the way I understand it, but let me tell you it. You said that I can tell, for example, the AI ChatGPT to don't use my data to like to train its model. Like for I didn't get
Yeah.
it. May you reiterate on it? I wasn't focusing. ففيك بس please if you may repeat this point.
Yeah, there's this setting in the tool. Let me see if I can quickly find it. If not, Mohammed, we can touch base afterwards and I can share with you how do you set that. But let me see if I can quickly find it. So in the settings, you should be able to, here we go, ChatGPT settings. Settings, yeah. Okay, let me show you where that is in the. So if you go to your name and then you go to settings, there's a lot you can control here, including the data control. So you can say improve the model for everyone, and if you turn it off, then your data is not going to be used to train the model. So if you're doing things that are sensitive, confidential, etc., this is where you want to turn off. However, if in general, if you're using it for research and things that are more general, it's good to let the model
share.
learn. Yeah, but it's up to you to make that judgment. And if you think you're doing things that are more confidential, you can turn that off. Yeah.
Because like because if I am writing my thesis, for example, and and I used AI, for example, to fix my grammar or my structure. So by putting this option, it will not like for future like my
That's
data will
correct.
not be AI generated.
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, other question. We'll take one more. Edwin, yeah, thank you. Edwin and Omar were right on. You're telling us where to go. Okay, great. So it seems like we're ready to move to the next couple of sections. So let's talk about detailing the content, and then I'm gonna come back. I think we're gonna have time to come back and show you those two because I think I talked earlier about death by PowerPoint, and I think there's so much more we can do in our storytelling and our presentations to make them much more come to life. And that's what gets people engaged. When they see slides, people can easily check out. However, when we use slides, which is always probably necessary. We want to be careful on how we detail our content, and that's what we're going to get to right now. So I'll share with you a number of concepts or principles or rules, or guidelines related to how do we create those slides and have them be really helpful and effective. So first of all, starting with this, easy principle, I think we all know this. Sometimes we don't exactly follow it, which is less is more. If what we're communicating is too much information, people very quickly check out. So I'm going to show you a little example. So if I put a slide that has so much, this is what people are going to see. They're not going to even see what's on the slide. They're just going to quickly check out. So that's why we really want our slides to be very succinct. We look at them as being the anchor instead of being the whole content. Is just the anchor for our verbal story to come up, and for people to have something to hook onto, so they know this is where we're headed, this is where we are, but not have it be the full content. And then, balancing between features and benefits. It's so easy to fall in love with whether it's a product or a service or an initiative, and talk about what it is, the features. But actually, for our stakeholders, it's the benefits that are more crucial. So instead of, these are the features we're offering, we want to balance between why are those features relevant and interesting. So features, benefits. And then the visuals. So making sure that the visuals are there as long as they are relevant. I think you may have seen presentations where they're full of visuals that are sometimes disconnected from the main purpose and the main message. So that wouldn't help when they are disconnected. They need to be very relevant to what we want to convey. And then having data can be very powerful. So I can tell you so much about, how social media and email take up so much of our time. But if I share, which is actually, this is an actual survey we did a while ago. If I shared some real data, that can convey the message so much more effectively. And I can take this to yet another level if I represent this in a visual instead of just the numbers. So now this really comes to life, and it becomes a much more impactful. Our brain, the right side of the brain will remember visuals, and now it engages our participants so much more than just the numbers and the analytical part. And this visual can be improved. So I'm going to apply the less is more rule to really take out of this visual anything that's not essential, to make it so succinct and representing the ideas I want to share, and just those ideas, nothing else that would be distracting. So this is what it would look like. So this visual is basically exactly what I want, where I want their attention to go, and nothing more. So when your presentation becomes at this level of being so focused on the message with nothing more, you become more clear, and the impact multiplies. Okay, demonstrations, live demonstrations. Anytime you have an opportunity to include something that's demonstrated live, whether it's a drawing or whether it's going to your app and actually showing a use case, that can go a long way instead of talking about it or having it be in a slide. And then different elements to consider that can add to storytelling, things like flowcharts, before and after, storyboards. This could be like the touch points with the end users that are helping make your proposed solution so much more attractive use cases. And this is where AI can help tremendously by helping you create those use cases, make them more compelling. They can be based on some of your user interviews or other real stories, but then you can make them clear and nicely articulated. And then, you know, things like could be even role play skits and videos when applicable. So let's take this opportunity to show you a couple of demonstrations using the two tools I mentioned earlier. One is Prezi and one is Miro. So first, I'm curious, how many of you are using Prezi? So just a little curious, you can raise your hand with the hand icon. That would be great, or put that in the chat if you prefer. Okay, so Prezi doesn't have currently a lot of following here. Okay, how about Miro? Miro, which is an online collaboration board, but also a great whiteboard for demonstrations. Okay, so good. So I think you're gonna find this an interesting additional potential tool to add to your repertoire when applicable. And I'm gonna show you those demonstrations to give you more ideas on where this could be applicable. So the first story I'm gonna share with you is called The Story of an Email. And this is just a fun couple-minute story that shows the impact of managing email in an ad hoc way and how this can take away from our productivity, make us more distracted and stressed. So this is part of a bigger story. So I'm just showing you, a little example, which is part of a bigger story, which is a whole email management solution that we have. But I just decided to show you this part as an example for storytelling. So the story of an email goes like this. So someone would be very focused on something really important that they want to get done. However, suddenly they hear the email beep or they see that little notification pop up. So they stop what they're doing and they open that email message. But then halfway through reading the message, another one arrives. So they leave this message alone and open the new one. And this happens again and again. So now they have all these messages opened and none of them really completed. For whatever reason, they start to reply to this message. But as soon as they start to reply, you see another message arrives. So they leave this alone. And now they open the new one. And this one has something about the calendar. So they jump into the calendar and they notice this unrelated item has nothing to do with that email. But they remember they forgot to send the report to these people before the meeting. Okay, so they start a new message trying to send that report. But as soon as they start typing, another one arrives. This one has a link. They click on the link. And now they're in the browser and they see, oh, Facebook is open. And now they're on Facebook for 20 minutes. That's the story of an email. Anyone does this sometimes? So yeah, Joel, yes. So this is, so I can tell you about this, right? I can forget about the story. I can just tell you, hey, we get so much interrupted in email and we start to work on something and something happened. But the impact of having this kind of semi-live demo and how this unfolds is so much more powerful when you're following, okay, what's going to happen next. And so that is where using some of those technologies to bring our story to life can make a huge difference. So yeah, the story of your life, Janine, yes. Okay, so now let's talk about another tool, which is Miro. And Miro has so many different applications. And today I'm just using it as a whiteboard. Like, you know how in the good old days we would be all in one room and we would have, I don't know, maybe charts, and we would have a marker and we do things on the chart, which is quite effective if you are in that context. And this is what we're doing here, but we're doing it in a digital way, which means our reach multiplies when we are in a context like today, where we're calling from many different places. So Miro can serve that purpose. So I'm going to use it also to draw a story. This is a story of interruptions. And in this case, I'm modeling how powerful it is to draw and let your audience kind of walk through the emotions every step of the way as you tell the story and as you draw what this means. So this story of interruptions, it examines how results change with time when we are working on a task. So if this is the results axis and this is time, so how do results change with time when we work on a task? And I don't know if some of you have. I think when I did the managing time in the digital overload session, I may have done this story. So some of you who may have attended that session, you may have seen this. So this will be just seeing it with a different lens to model how we tell a story. But just I want to acknowledge that some of you may have seen me do this before. So how do results change with time when we work on a task? Well, when I start to work on the task, hopefully I start to get some results. If I continue, I get more and more results. Is this going to continue forever? Probably not. It's going to level off, and then it's probably going to drop because I may be tired at this time, or maybe I did what I could and now I need someone else to do their part. I can't do anymore before someone else does their part. Or maybe I'm done with the task, so nothing more to be done, so I can't get more results. Okay, so this is what you expect to happen. But in real life, does this happen? What happens after a few minutes? We get interrupted or distracted, and our results go down to 0. And then a few minutes later, we pick up and we restart or continue on this task. We make some progress, and then we get interrupted again. Results go down to 0. And this happens, again and again and again. What am I describing? I'm describing our life. So this is Janine, our life. This is a bigger picture of how we work, unfortunately. So if you look at this, if you look at the results we're getting by working few minutes here, few minutes there, this is probably 5 to 10% of the total results we would be getting if we were to stay fully focused. So, but not only this, not only the 5 to 10%, but also when we work few minutes here, few minutes there, we don't get deep into the issues we're working on, the whatever the tasks are. We don't get really deep. We don't get to be creative. We don't get to be strategic. We're just doing the quick fixes, moving in and out. So this is impacting our ability to be productive, to be creative. It's adding to our stress level. So how do we address this? We need to stay focused long enough in order to accomplish all of this in the shortest amount of time. That's what we call the accomplishment zone. So we need to be focused long enough to accomplish all of this. Omar, was there something you wanted to share? Okay, maybe that was accidental. Okay, I'll put you back on. Okay. So now the question is, how long is long enough? So you see what I'm doing here? I don't know if you noticed, but let me show you which formula here is on display. It's this formula. So I said, oh, we need to be focused long enough in order to get so much more accomplished. But now I'm going to take you back to, however, what is long enough? How long is long enough? So I brought a new dimension to the problem, which I'm going to give you the answer for, and then I'm going to address another dimension. I'm going to keep going until finally I'm going to get to the final solution. I'll do a little more. I'm not going to finish this whole thing, but I'm going to do just a little more so you see how, this is exactly the Nancy Duarte's kind of approach where, we share something, we share what the problem is, and then we come up with some ideas for how we could address it, but then we take on another part of the problem or another aspect that's deeper or broader or different, and then we address it, and then we keep going. We're building momentum, and that's what you want your presentation to your funder or to whoever the stakeholders are to be, is building momentum, getting them more and more engaged to the final moment where you throw in the vision and say, this is where we're headed. Okay, so how long is long enough? Well, that depends on the task. So some tasks maybe 10, 15 minutes, other tasks maybe 20, 30 minutes, or maybe several hours. So the idea is to be intentional. And before I take on a task, I would assess, what do I need to get something meaningful done? And then I would try to carve that time for this task. Okay, so now I took you, where did I take you now? I took you to the next one. So it depends on the task. I need to carve that time. Now I'm going to take you back down here. I'm going to say, but is it easy to carve that time and stay focused? It's not easy. It's actually really difficult to stay focused for any length of time. So how do we do this? So right now, I'm not going to give you the solution right now, but when we do this actual talk, the full talk, we tell you that we're going to, throughout the session, which is typically a few hour workshop, we're going to tackle many of the potential distractions that come up. And we're going to have strategies on how to address them along the way. And we're going to acknowledge, so then we go down here, we're going to acknowledge there are some distractions that we just don't have control over, and they're going to continue to distract us. And that's okay, because we're going to have strategies for how to recover quickly from those distractions that you cannot possibly change them. So then at the end, then we leave you with, a number of interesting insights about how we work. And by the way, for those who are curious, continuing this model means, after this focus session, we switch. We become totally collaborative. We call this the collaboration zone. And during this time, we become open. We talk to people. We share ideas. We ask questions. We have meetings. We have brainstorming. And the results we're going to get here are going to be pretty high. So collaboration is equally important to focus, but we need to decide where we want to be and alternate. And then after that, just to throw in one more insight here, we need to stop. We need to stop, and we call it play, which is do something that gets you energized and gets you calm and ready for more, as opposed to try to keep going and then eventually feel, totally exhausted and then get into a bad mood and all what happens with that. So yeah, so that was a little demo of how those tools can just bring a whole different dimension to how we create the story, how we tell the story, how to make it come to life, and all together can be a very powerful thing. So in conclusion, I would like to encourage, I'm going to share with you a bunch of resources now, but I want to encourage you to start practicing. And you don't need to practice a whole big story. In your next team meeting, when you have a small part of, maybe 3, 5, 10 minutes to do, look at it as a story and see how can I create something that really moves people, gets them to feel something. Can I create some suspense along the way? and see how you can start to practice that way. And of course, for the next bigger presentation, that could be very relevant. And keeping in mind, like, what is the purpose, and is my story satisfying that purpose? So that's kind of a very important part of it. So with this, I do have a little feedback form that will be great to get your feedback on what was helpful today and so forth. And then I have an online portal I'm going to share with you so you can have the slides and also the problem definition that I shared with you earlier. And I do have office hours, so people who feel they have more questions, we have time for a little bit of a discussion. But if you feel like you have more questions, you wanna have longer conversation, you can feel free to join the office hours. I'll share with you the link as well. So with this, anything you wanna add, Janine? Before, I know Gigi has a question, so we can go to questions unless you have something you'd like to add.
Nothing from me, Pierre. Thank you so much. As
Okay.
always, very insightful.
Okay, great. So yeah, Gigi, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Pierre. That was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that feedback, the background, the information. It was great. A question I have for you is that obviously for us to get the opportunity to tell the story, unless you're being invited, it starts at networking events, right? So your 30-second elevator speech is very crucial and important because a lot of times I think people are there for the same reasons, and people are there to be heard and make the common mistake of not listening, right? So there could be a lot of back and forth there that sometimes, or an opportunity that gets missed out on. What are some common mistakes that you see in putting together that 30 to 60-second elevator speech? And if you can share that with us.
Yeah, that's a good. Well, thank you first for your observation, which is so on target. Like, in order to tell a story, we need to find someone to listen to the story, and that means, developing relationships, networking, etc. Yeah, so what could be some mistakes or pitfalls in telling the story? I think one thing I think sometimes happens is we're too factual and not bringing the emotional part. Like, why are we passionate about this? And not just why are we passionate, why other people are passionate. Like, what's the impact? So if we're too factual, not emotional enough, we're not likely to get that initial interest. If we're not if we're not elevating our content, which I mentioned the word elevating earlier, which means instead of the little details, like, what's the bigger impact? So sometimes if that's missing, that can, be a reason why we wouldn't get attention. And I think there's a little bit also of a non-verbal part to that. There is a little bit of an excitement that needs to come in our non-verbal communication. And that, that also takes, maybe some practice and some more practice with our safe community. So this is where, having some mentors and having some colleagues and people who we feel they're our advisors who can help us practice and show up. I also would say a little tip here is to record ourselves. When we hear ourselves, and if also maybe it's a video, when we see ourselves and hear ourselves, that's a great way to gauge, how are we showing up and are we creating that energy? Yeah, so those are what come to mind now, Gigi, but that's a great question to continue to think about. Yeah.
Pierre, I wanted to comment a little bit on this one because I worked for IBM for 30 years. And one of the things they would do when we prep presentations is they would ask us to shut down the laptop and just give the gist of the presentation. So it's very important to, and especially I like in Lebanon, sometimes you have power outages and you lose what you got. So be very much able to summarize your pitch and not get lost into it. Because if you get lost with what you're trying to convey and what you're trying to get out of it, then you're going to lose everyone with the presentation. So that would be my advice: is be
Yes.
ready for that disaster moment where you no longer have access to your PowerPoint, but you still have to relay the message and get out of it what you want to get out of it.
Yeah, great advice, Janine. So yes, so assume you have nothing. What would you say? Yeah, and that's related to that. This is why being clear on the insights and the impact, as opposed to having to go through the whole thing. Like if I were to say it in 1 minute, what would I say? Yeah, and sometimes a related situation, you may be allocated, maybe it's part of a meeting where multiple presenters, and you may be allocated whatever 10-15 minutes, and then they end up running behind and you end up with 2 minutes. So what would you say if you couldn't do your 10 or 15 minutes and you only had 2 minutes? So being prepared for that. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? While you're thinking about it, let me share with you.
We have a raised hand from Roy Issa.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Roy, please go ahead. And as Roy is asking the question, I'm going to share the couple links I mentioned earlier, which is the office hours and the online portal where you can see the slides and the resources. Yeah, go ahead, Roy, please.
Yeah, Roy Eid from San Francisco. Janine and I tackled this question many times, and I put it in chat. How could we, as participants, groups, expats, technology savvy, anything you want, put our efforts and resources together to create jobs, software and hardware jobs in Lebanon? I am associated with 2 software companies and 1 hardware company that little, if any, Lebanese know about it in Lebanon, with 5 locations. How could we put our resources together as Lebanese, as ATFL, as Lebnet, as any companies, to secure projects so these young men and women in Lebanon can stay in their countries and buy sha'a and buy apartments and what have you?
So Pierre, if you will allow me, I would just want to say that I've met Roy. Roy is amazingly passionate about creating opportunities for our youth in Lebanon and keeping the brain drain to a minimum as well as, and especially now that we're experiencing another resurrection there, putting our heads together to figure out how we can create opportunities. So this is an amazing question, Roy, and you have a good audience here for that, both on the side of the students who are joining us today, as well as the people in tech of Lebanese descent in the diaspora. So I urge you to please, if you have any input to Roy's question or suggestion, send them to me. We can have an offline discussion with Roy on this. So I hope that's acceptable, Roy. Pierre, is there anything you'd like to add to this?
I think thank you, Janine, and thank you, Roy. This is such a it's a challenge and an opportunity at the same time. And I think the more of us get into this problem solving mode. Did we do, Janine, a design thinking session before already? I think we did. Creativity, innovation.
That was last year.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I think it really needs to come together and say, how can we, what part of this, it's hard, it's a big challenge, so it's hard to take it all on. So what parts can we take on and how? And so yeah, it's having the enough people in that conversation. And I think thank you for bringing it to today's meeting, because this is the right audience, and hopefully more ideas will continue to flow and more can happen. Yeah, I see in the chat, thank you, Osama, you're sharing some really great things. Yeah, if India can do it, yes.
I just want to add, because I'm not in the tech world, though I am indirectly, I'm in banking. And I've been in banking for over 25 years. I worked at an institution prior to joining this one for 20 plus years before it went under. So if I'm giving my 30-second or 60-second elevator speech, I will say that I'm a bank run survivor. And I'm sure that that would open a lot of great conversation there. I'm sure you guys, if you're in Bay Area, Southern California, you've heard of First Republic Bank. But like as we're talking and now coming over and opening up a brand new private bank here in the West Coast that's been in business for over 185 years, has its challenges. And we're working on tech, and I'm getting in front of a lot of people. And so what drove me to actually join LebNet, just to tell you guys really quick, is that we had a group from Mexico that came through here about 2 weeks ago, where they're pulling their people together to introduce them to other tech firms, VCs. And I opened up my doors to have them have a couple of meetings out here. And I was like, wait, hold on, why am I not doing this with my people? Right? Born in Lebanon, came here when I was 8, and have just like this great passion for just helping bring people back together and keeping Lebanon going while, if for those of us that can't leave there. So my suggestion would be to have influencers, to have mentors that can come together, join meetings like this, raise their hands if they're hiring, encourage people to come get mentored by us here, whether on the finance side, tech side, because a lot of times it's not the content, it's not what you know, but who you know, and it's making sure that you're at the right place at the right time. So I just want to encourage us maybe to reach out beyond just the tech world and get people that would be interested in giving back or helping. And that's why I joined today. So I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Roy, for joining us every time and trying to kind of ignite that passion in all of us to help.
Well, if I may say one final word, Janine. May I?
Yes, of course. I was waiting for you.
For the banker and for all of those who just sent their email, I really appreciate you. We are putting together an investors fund for $30 million to build 5 locations throughout Lebanon and create jobs in the next 5 to 7 years, between 8 and 10,000 jobs, young men and women that I would hate to see happen to them what happened to me 46 years ago when they kicked me out of Lebanon and I came to San Francisco.
Very
And
good,
this is
Roy.
from the heart.
Allah يوفقكم, and thank you for sharing that as well and for all the great things you're doing.
Thank you, Janine, for always
So
being
you
there.
all have Roy's number. Call him if you have ideas and if you want to help him and help Lebanon and help all of us.
Thank you.
Roy,
thank you guys. God bless you.
I'm your neighbor here in San Francisco. I just sent my email. Let's stay in touch, man. Maybe we can meet up and chat and see what we can do. I'm in the cybersecurity field.
I'd love to. I'm at the Santa Clara LebNet gathering tonight, so if you're going.
I was planning on going. I don't think I'm going to be able to make it tonight. I will try, but let's stay in touch for sure. And anyone who's in San Francisco would love to, get a community going.
I can make you WhatsApp with Janine, so.
I love this exchange, but let's get back to Pierre. Thank you, guys. This is awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. What a great forum to exchange, all these amazing ideas and intentions. And so I think with this, if no more questions about the storytelling part, we can wish everyone some great storytelling moving forward on all fronts. And I'll hand it back to Janine.
Very great. Thank you so much, Pierre, always for your time, your expertise, and your willingness to share your resources as well. So we'll share all of that with everyone, and I look forward to staying in touch and continue our collaboration here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Janine. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.